It's not the strongest of the species that survive, not the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. Charles Darwin. The Menninger Institute of Kansas City conducted a study to determine what qualities would be the most important for success and happiness in the 21st century. After carrying out an extensive research, they concluded that the most important quality that you can develop in the times of rapid change is flexibility. Flexibility means the ability to change, adapt, and welcome questioning and being open to new information. The opposite of flexibility thinking is mechanical thinking or holding rigid positions. The byproducts of rigidity is orthodoxy, one-sided thinking, and narrow-mindedness. Resilience is often associated with the concept of flexibility, to bend without breaking, to stretch without being pulled out of shape.
Resilience is simply that after being bent, compressed, stretched, or squashed, it's the ability to come back to one's original formation. So that is often what it feels like when we're taking risks, when we're putting ourselves out there, when we're doing hard things. It feels like we are being bent, compressed, stretched, and squashed. And then resilience is about getting ourselves back to our original formation after all that happens so that we can pick ourselves up, keep going, and keep growing, and keep living this one life that we have.
Being adaptable and flexible is the key to being resilient. If we look up in the dictionary, we can see that resilience is defined as elasticity, and the ability to recover quickly and easily, and to return to one's original state after an illness, misfortune, or shock.
According to Fortune magazine, in 1999, they said that in order to be successful in this millennium, you had to possess two characteristics. And those two characteristics are flexibility and adaptability. I call it AFA all the way. Always flexible and adaptable, because if you're rigid, you break, and what good is it to be broken? An example of flexibility and adaptability is with Bob. This is Bob, and he stretches, he's very flexible, and he always bounces back from adversity, and you can too.
An essential part of becoming more resilient is developing flexibility. By learning how to be more adaptable, you will become better equipped to respond to a life crisis or a predicament that you may face in life.
Years ago, the Harvard Business Review published an article about how adaptability was the new competitive advantage. And another article written on the subject stated that adaptability has two main parts. First is flexibility, or your willingness to adapt, and the second is versatility, which is your ability to adapt. Now, so how can you adapt? Well, let's start by remembering this quote from our old friend Albert. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. So if you find yourself resisting change or struggling to adapt to challenging circumstances, keep in mind that by doing this, you're putting yourself in a neurological state that actually closes off your mind to new possibility. Studies and brain scans have shown this, that when we fight growth and change, our synapses start firing less and we actually become less creative. So I have to say, I agree with businessman and Silicon Valley legend Andrew Grove, who said, there are two options, adapt or die. Let's not die. Let's change, let's grow, and let's adapt.
Alice Walker once rightly said, "Nature has a funny way of breaking what does not bend." Bamboo may be the perfect metaphor for the idea of flexibility and resiliency. Despite its hard body, bamboo is incredibly flexible and will sway even in the gentlest breeze. Yet it will often be the only thing standing after a typhoon. With its roots firmly anchored in the ground, bamboo plants can endure challenging temperature, extremes of winter and summer, and yet they are one of the fastest growing plants in the world. There are arguably many life lessons to glean from bamboo, such as learning to face obstacles not with stubborn resistance, but with flexibility. Flexibility means having a flexible mindset that focuses on growth instead of a non-flexible one. A growth mindset means realizing that abilities and better understanding can be developed.
A growth mindset is the belief that we can learn anything we want, and in fact, it's challenges and failure that help us grow. Effort and attitude are what determine our abilities, not our biology. So By contrast, a fixed mindset is the belief that I'm either good at it or not, I can either do it or I can't. It's that belief that challenges and mistakes are character defects somehow. A growth mindset helps us persist through difficulties, which is a really important skill in building resilience.
Psychosclerosis is a term used in psychology to describe people with hardened attitudes and beliefs who are hard to change.
Psychosclerosis is your natural tendency to fall in love with your own ideas, thoughts, views, compulsions in a way that you impose your opinion on other people. Now, the people who are opposite of this are highly adaptable and flexible because they believe that any thought, idea, or a belief can actually help them solve their problem. They also know that the state of mind which created the problem cannot help them in solving it unless they shift their state of mind to a solution-seeking behavior and thinking. Now, open-minded people love to receive new ideas from a variety of resources available to them, and they always prefer to apply the right ideas at the right time. One of the greatest discoveries of positive psychology is that you can change your life by changing the inner state of your mind. The direction of your destiny is in direct proportion to a mental state that we are directed towards. So when people say, take charge of your life, that simply means take charge of your current mental state.
The thought we hold in our mind has the potential to make us act in a certain way. Ralph Waldo Emerson rightly puts it, the ancestor of every action is a thought.
You can have control over your habitual thoughts. It's important that you pay attention to the nature of your thoughts and intentionally substitute the negative ones with positive ones. When you change the nature of your thinking, you are literally changing your brain. Modern science, especially in the developing field of neuroplasticity, or the brain's capacity to reorganize itself, tells us that the human brain has an amazing ability to change its ways through the repetition of a thought alone.
And the key to neuroplasticity is all about high repetition. So if you want to change negative behaviors in your body and in your thoughts, you have to repeat new behaviors over and over and over until they stick in your brain and your brain has rewired itself successfully. So every time you practice a positive behavior, you begin to form and strengthen connections between the neurons. And that's basically how actors would learn a script. We have to repeat new words over and over again until they stick in our heads. And the amazing thing is, when you are learning a script, you often don't feel that it's really going in. So if I was to practice my lines over and over with movement, say for maybe 10 minutes every day, the next day that I wake up, I can then recite them without much effort. And it's the combination of the new connections forming in my brain and the muscle memory of what happens when I move in a certain way. The neurons in your brain need good repetition in order to strengthen themselves, and they also need consistency in order to stick. So, for example, if you were to practice a new habit for maybe 10 minutes, but only do that once a week, it's not going to make that much of a lasting difference. The time in between your practice sessions will cause those new connections to weaken, so you absolutely have to keep going in small increments of success.
So all you need is the right tools to harness your brain's learning power through repetition. With intention and deliberate practice, you can always change your mental pathways. You can replace the habit of self-criticism and other negative tendencies with more resourceful, healthy patterns of thoughts and behavior. You can train yourself to think like a winner by shifting your focus from dwelling on problems to seeking solutions. That's why resilient people are able to figure out creative solutions for their problems, which eventually lead them to positive outcomes in life.
When things don't go your way, it's easy to develop helplessness and think like you're a victim. Your mind uses pain and misery to create a victim's identity to escape from solving your own problems. This mindset forces you to feel sorry for yourself by telling stories to create permanence in helpless conditions, by negating all possible ways of seeking solutions. Psychologists called it learned helplessness.
Victim road is the easy road that you can take. You can always find something or someone responsible for an unfortunate outcome in your life. It's easy to pass the buck, blame other people. Instead, taking responsibility for one's own fault is a tough one. I think Wayne Dyer said it perfectly once when he said, if our problems were caused by other people, we would be spending a fortune sending them to a psychiatrist. People who are resilient, they take 100% responsibility for both their failures and success. They know if it is to be, it's up to me. When we were kids, we knew that our parents would look after our problems, and many people still delude themselves into thinking that fixing their problem is somebody else's responsibility.
Now, people who are stuck in victim mentality typically feel like the world is against them, like there's someone out to get you, or that you just can't get ahead, you can't catch a break. And maybe you actually feel powerless. Maybe you feel weak, maybe you feel hopeless. And many of the victims that I've run into secretly hope that someone is going to come along and save them. And instead of taking action, when you're in the victim role, you just complain, or you blame, or you wallow in self-pity. And so this typically means that you feel blocked, you feel stuck, and you don't even know where to go, what to do, or even where to begin to change your situation.
But the day you realize that nobody's going to come and fix your mess, that you need to assume 100% responsibility, and fixing your mess is actually your job, that day you realize that you've grown up to be an adult. The acceptance of 100% personal responsibility for your own life is a giant step to grow mentally from a childish tantrums of negating responsibility to an adult's maturity.
The alternative to self-pity and to victimhood is to take responsibility. Write this down and remember it. Responsibility is doing all you can with all you have where you are right now. Let me repeat that. Doing all you can with all you have where you are right now. And you know what? That takes out a lot of the complaining. It takes out a lot of waiting for someone else to do it, but gets you moving in action.
If you want to cultivate resilience, then you need to stop identifying yourself as a victim.
But the thing to know is that you weren't born this way. You learned it. You didn't come pre-programmed as a victim. This is something that was learned and then reinforced over time. See, when we take on the role of the victim, it's typically in response to something that we have experienced. Well, I'll give you two examples. One is if you grew up in a situation where you were being bullied, or you were being teased, or you were being abused. Repeated bullying can make us feel like we are the victim, particularly if we didn't have the ability to fight back or to get help. Now, there's a second way that you may have fallen into this victim role, and that is if you were spoiled as a child. Now, if you had everything just given to you and you were showered with all sorts of praise and love, and then you get out into the real world and you realize, I actually have to work for things. Things are not just given to me. Some people can then also fall into this victim role where they're like, why won't somebody save me? Why isn't everything just coming to me? Now, this is a subconscious program, and feeling like a victim can get reinforced in many subtle ways, not just when you're a kid, as you're growing up. The unfortunate thing is it can feel nearly impossible to change, because when you're in that victim role, it's really hard to see anything happy or hopeful.
Ultimately, victimhood is perpetuated by the stories that we tell ourselves.
Once you can see where you picked up this narrative or this story, it's a story that you tell yourself about yourself. Once you find out where that came from and you start to evaluate it, then you can change that script. You can change the subconscious programming. Now, changing the program that's running in your subconscious mind is all about taking authority back. Authority for your life. This is about reclaiming your power.
If you are in a victimhood narrative, then it's time to change that narrative.
So what we're going to do is flip the script. So even if you have played that victim role for a long time, and maybe it seems like it's totally ingrained in your psyche, well, you can flip the script. You can reprogram your subconscious mind. You can even rewire the brain. That's what neuroplasticity is all about. Even if you've spent most of your life feeling like the underdog, feeling like everything was against you, that life was happening to you, not for you, even if you've been carrying that poor me, it's not my fault attitude, you can actually change all of that.
Instead of staying rigid, stay flexible. Sometimes reality we see might not be clear and can often delude us. We need help in changing our perspectives from people who can help us see things more objectively rather than subjectively.
Resilient people understand that anything can happen because the world isn't fair and that difficult things can happen even to good people. Bad things can happen to good people. See? So when you feel shattered, you need to pick yourself up and you need to move forward. You should always remember that you can find a way out of almost anything. It's in your hands to change the spiral of things that brings you down. When you assume 100% responsibility, you can overcome anything. You become a resourceful person when you assume 100% responsibility. You will see what you normally don't see. Therefore, I believe resilience is more of a state of an inner resourcefulness that allows you to thrive during challenging times. You have the power to access all these resources once you make up your mind. If you cannot find it within you, you can always find it around you. If you cannot help yourself, you can always seek help and get help from other people.
Okay, if it's just you with yourself, you and your mind, it's very easy to get led astray. But if you talk to people and they might give you more objective feedback, it can really help take that charge out of it. Now, be careful here. Talk to people who help alleviate the charge, not people who fuel it. Okay, there are people where when you talk about your problems, they love it and they'll just add to it. They'll be like, oh, that is horrible. You know what? That's way worse than you realize. What if that happens? What if that happens? And they actually make you feel much worse about it. Not those people. Talk to people who are much more grounded, who can inject some lighter perspective, some positivity, some hope, anything to just take once more the charge, the heaviness out of adversity.
All resilient people know that they cannot do it on their own, so they get help. But more precisely, they go to the right person.
A resilient person has a wonderful support system, and they're selective about it. A resilient person knows that they can drop their pride and ask for help. They don't know it all. They can ask for help. They don't have all the answers, but here's the deal. They're very selective on who they do ask for help because they know that success leaves clues. So they follow the clues of other successful people, and that's who they choose as their support system. So myself, I know who I'm going to reach out to when I need help. It's going to be somebody that I have seen have success in what I'm trying to achieve. And here's the other thing before I move on to that one. Not only do successful people, resilient people ask for help, but they also give it. It's a two-way street.
Getting help is not a bad thing at all. And yes, sometimes you might feel ashamed or embarrassed and hence won't ask for help. But do not let your pride get in your way. Remember, there is no rescue mission for those who do not want to be saved. We all experience reality with our own unique psychological reality. That is perceived by our mind. Two people can witness the same traffic accident and give two varied descriptions of it. Our reality is subjective to our unique perception and experience. William Shakespeare was right when he wrote, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Nothing has a meaning except the meaning that we give to it. Typically, for a person who loves chocolate, eating chocolate is a pleasurable experience. But if the same person becomes obese and finds himself in a dreadful situation because of that chocolate, which actually caused him to gain weight, he will then begin to associate pain with chocolates. Therefore, what one person finds painful can be pleasurable to other people. We all have different mental associations with various words. For some happy married couples, marriage means love and companionship. But when that same couple starts missing freedom and their space in their life, they will later term marriage as bondage. After a bitter divorce, they will term it as pain. Ultimately, our neuroassociation to words is derived from our own personal experience. Some meanings never change, but some do over a period of time. The meaning we give anything will have an impact on how we feel and what we decide. When we change the meaning from negative to positive, we can literally change how we feel and choose, and ultimately alter the outcome itself. This is called reframing.
As human beings, we are constantly putting our own interpretation on the things that happen around us. We're basically making up stories in our own head that feel like reality but are actually our interpretation of reality. And one of the ways that we enable ourselves to change is by changing our perspective on things. And that's what reframing does. Reframing helps you to see things in a new way by finding new, more positive interpretations of what's happening.
People who are resilient are the masters of reframing. By changing the meaning of failures and setbacks, people who are resilient, they are able to move ahead with confidence. Now, reframing means adapting to new perspectives or revising your current beliefs about something. It focuses on changing a negative statement or an experience into a positive one. You do that by altering the frame of reference used to perceive a previous experience. Now, people frame their mind to perceive a human experience. By reframing, we can change the meaning. And by changing the meaning, we can change the experience itself. By reframing, we can put a new meaning to a previously perceived experience. Our fixed perceptions can be reframed, making us more adaptive to changes. We can label our experience as good or bad, and thus we hold the capacity to change the experience itself. By reframing, we can turn a bad experience into a good one, a traumatic experience into a moment of triumph. Haven't you heard people complaining, "Gosh, I had to pay so much of taxes this year"? Now think about reframing it and say, I made a lot of money this year. See, by reframing, you can change your attitude towards something, and by changing that attitude, you can change the experience itself. Instead of complaining about paying bills, reframe it and think about it in a different way, saying, "Oh, how fortunate I am that I'm able to pay for all the things that I use." See, when you change the way you look at something, what you look at changes completely.
Now, a couple of really great reframing hacks that I'd like to share with you are as follows. The first is any time that you notice yourself saying, "Oh God, today I've got to homeschool the kids. Today I've got to stay at home for most of the day. Or today I need to clean the house." You simply change the word got to get. So, for example, I've got to homeschool my kids. Today I get to homeschool my kids. A completely different perspective on the same scenario. Rather than I've got to stay at home today, I get to stay at home today. And it's a way of starting to feel appreciative and thankful for what you get to do, rather than feeling imposed and weary about what you've got to do. Another of these hacks is to catch yourself anytime you notice yourself using words like, "Oh, I really should do this, I really ought to do that, I really need to do this." And to again change that obligation by changing your language. So rather than saying, "Oh, I really should clean the house today," saying, "I can clean the house today if I choose to." So changing got to get and changing shoulds and oughts to I can if I choose to. If this technique is new to you, you might find it particularly helpful to write this down. So get a bit of paper and write down some of the statements and things that you're saying to yourself that are dragging you down and making you feel rather helpless or put upon. And then think about how you could change those, how you could reframe those statements to see things in a new, more positive perspective.
You may not be able to reverse a bad event that happened in the past, but you can change your perceptions and the internal representations of that past event by reframing the meaning of the event. You can thus turn your scars into stars. That is the gift of reframing. Through reframing, you can change your past, present, and future. It's not about what happened that shaped your experience, but the narrative about what happens that defines your experience. If you can change the story, you can also change the meaning attached to it. And once the meaning changes, whatever happens to you, however bad it is, what happened no longer matters.